Letter 62. To the Honourable Daines Barrington. There were some circumstances attending the remarkable frost in January 1776 so singular and striking that a short detail of them may not be unacceptable. The most certain way to be exact will be to copy the passages from my journal, which were taken from time to time as things occurred. But it may be proper previously to remark that the first week in January was uncommonly wet, and drowned with vast rains from every quarter, from whence may be inferred, as there is great reason to believe is the case, that intense frosts seldom take place till the earth is perfectly glutted and chilled with water. Footnote. The autumn preceding January 1768 was very wet, and particularly the month of September, during which there fell at Linden, in the county of Rutland, 6 inches and a half of rain, and the terrible long frost of 1739 to 1740 set in after a rainy season, and when the springs were very high. End note. And hence dry autumns are seldom followed by rigorous winters. January 7th, snow driving all the day, which was followed by frost, sleet, and some snow, till the 12th, when a prodigious mass overwhelmed all the works of men, drifting over the tops of the gates and filling the hollow lanes. On the 14th, the writer was obliged to be much abroad, and thinks he never before or since has encountered such rugged Siberian weather. Many of the narrow roads were now filled above the tops of the hedges, through which the snow was driven into most romantic and grotesque shapes, so striking to the imagination as not to be seen without wonder and pleasure. The poultry dared not to stir out of their roosting places, for cocks and hens are so dazzled and confounded by the glare of snow that they would soon perish without assistance. The hares also lay sullenly in their seats, and would not move until compelled by hunger, being conscious, poor animals, that the drifts and heaps treacherously betray their footsteps, and prove fatal to numbers of them. From the 14th, the snow continued to increase, and began to stop the road wagons and coaches, which could no longer keep on their regular stages, and especially on the western roads, where the fall appears to have been deeper than in the south. The company at Bath, that wanted to attend the Queen's birthday, were strangely incommoded. Many carriages of persons who got, in their way to town from Bath, as far as Marlborough, after strange embarrassments, here met with a ne plus ultra. The ladies fretted, and offered large rewards to labourers, if they would shovel them a track to London, but the relentless heaps of snow were too bulky to be removed, and so the 18th passed over, leaving the company in very uncomfortable circumstances at the castle and other inns. Reader's note. Ne plus ultra. Insurpassable obstacle. End note. On the 20th, the sun shone out for the first time since the frost began, a circumstance that has been remarked before much in favour of vegetation. All this time the cold was not very intense, for the thermometer stood at 29, 28, 25, and thereabout, but on the 21st it descended to 20. The birds now began to be in a very pitiable and starving condition. Tamed by the season, skylarks settled in the streets of towns, because they saw the ground was bare, Rooks frequented dunghills close to houses, and crows watched horses as they passed, and greedily devoured what dropped from them. Hares now came into men's gardens, and, scraping away the snow, devoured such plants as they could find. On the 22nd, the author had occasion to go to London through a sort of Laplandian scene, very wild and grotesque indeed. But the metropolis itself exhibited a still more singular appearance than the country. For, being bedded deep in snow, the pavement of the streets could not be touched by the wheels or the horses' feet, so that the carriages ran about without the least noise. Such an exception from din and clatter was strange, but not pleasant. It seemed to convey an uncomfortable idea of desolation. Ipsa silentia terrent. Reader's note. And dreadful even the silence of the night. Translation by Dryden. End note. On the 27th, much snow fell all day, and in the evening the frost became very intense. At South Lambeth, for the 4 following nights, the thermometer fell to 11, 7, 6, 6, and at Selborne to 7, 6, 10. And on the 31st January, just before sunrise, with rime on the trees and on the tube of the glass, the quicksilver sunk exactly to 0, being 32 degrees below the freezing point. But by 11 in the morning, though in the shade, it sprung up to 16.5, a most unusual degree of cold, this for the south of England. Footnote. At Selborne the cold was greater than at any other place that the author could hear of with certainty, though some reported at the time that at a village in Kent the thermometer fell 2 degrees below 0, namely 34 degrees below the freezing point. The thermometer used at Selborne was graduated by Benjamin Martin. End note. During these 4 nights the cold was so penetrating that it occasioned ice in warm chambers and under beds. And in the day the wind was so keen that persons of robust constitutions could scarcely endure to face it. The Thames was at once so frozen over, both above and below bridge, that crowds ran about on the ice. The streets were now strangely encumbered with snow, which crumbled and trod dusty, and, turning grey, resembled bay salt. What had fallen on the roofs was so perfectly dry that, from first to last, it lay 26 days on the houses in the city, a longer time than had been remembered by the oldest housekeepers living. According to all appearances, we might now have expected the continuance of this rigorous weather for weeks to come, since every night increased in severity. But behold, without any apparent cause, on the 1st of February a thaw took place, and some rain followed before night, making good the observation above, that frosts often go off, as it were at once, without any gradual declension of cold. On the 2nd of February the thaw persisted, and on the 3rd swarms of little insects were frisking and sporting in a courtyard at South Lambeth, as if they had felt no frost. Why the juices in the small bodies and smaller limbs of such minute beings are not frozen is a matter of curious inquiry. Severe frosts seem to be partial, or to run in currents, for at the same juncture as the author was informed by accurate correspondence, at Linden in the county of Rutland the thermometer stood at 19, at Blackburn in Lancashire at 19, and at Manchester at 21, 20, and 18. Thus does some unknown circumstance strangely overbalance latitude, and render the cold sometimes much greater in the southern than in the northern parts of this kingdom. The consequences of this severity were that in Hampshire, at the melting of the snow, the wheat looked well, and the turnips came forth little injured. The laurels and laurestines were somewhat damaged, but only in hot aspects. No evergreens were quite destroyed, and not half the damage sustained that befell in January 1768. Those laurels that were a little scorched on the south sides were perfectly untouched on their north sides. The care taken to shake the snow day by day from the branches seemed greatly to avail the author's evergreens. A neighbour's laurel hedge, in a high situation, and facing to the north, was perfectly green and vigorous, and the Portugal laurels remained unhurt. As to the birds, the thrushes and blackbirds were mostly destroyed, and the partridges, by the weather and poachers, were so thinned that few remained to breed the following year.